To Las Vegas for 2020, live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios. It's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen and Matt Gutierrez.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I guess some CBS theme there in the background. We'll fix that for you here in a second. We got national feed coming through on the same time. We're going to get our crack engineer, David Stepanian, is going to take care of that. There we go. Hey. Magic. Through the magic of audio. Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM in Las Vegas. Las Vegas' only all-Raiders talk show, while others in the Valley dabble in the Raiders, mostly without an informed opinion. That's all we do here. We're coming to you live from the Dollar Loan Center, don'tbebroke.com studios. David, hey, hit record on that for me, would you, buddy?
Yeah, sure.
On the other side, I appreciate that. And I'm your host, Scott Gulbransen, founder and publisher of silverandblacktoday.com, joined by my astute and rested after a long day co-host, Matt Gutierrez. What's up, man?
Feeling good, man. We touched on it just a second ago. David was mentioning it. We were at the covering the UNLV game last night for Coaches versus Cancer Neon Hoops Classic, UNLV and BYU. And UNLV hit an overtime three-pointer to win the game. It felt good, man. I know we bash UNLV a lot around here, and with good reason for the way these programs have been for the football, the last 50 decades, I guess. For basketball, the last few years, but it's always nice to beat BYU if you're a UNLV fan, and that was a fun one, man. That felt good.
And especially when there were so many BYU fans.
Always nice to watch BYU fans walk out unhappy.
The rivalry lives. So speaking of, Matt, I got to talk to you about this, though. Before we get into the Raider stuff, we got a lot of stuff to get through today, a lot of guests, is the bowl game yesterday. So I went out to the Las Vegas Bowl, Arizona State, where my daughter goes, graduating this year, so I've become a Sun Devil fan. And then when Herm got the head coach job, I love Herm.
Herm's great, man.
He is fantastic, and he's going to, I think, did well with a program there that had a lot of holes. He's had his first full year recruiting now, so I expect them to do well. They already pulled in a good quarterback from California. But the bowl game, I love going out to bowl games. Fantastic. It was meaningful because of the Arizona State connection, and of course Fresno State, a Mountain West team. Good to see them doing so well, and a good team. I mean, just unbelievable performance yesterday to win the Las Vegas Bowl. Didn't go my way. But the one thing I just got to talk about is, and if anybody with the Bulls listening, your sound was awful. My ears were ringing. I had my little kids with me, and they wanted to leave within 2 minutes of getting there because the music was so loud. If anybody out there does game operations for the Las Vegas Bowl, shame on you. It was just terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Then you had the PA announcer was bone rattling as well. I mean, what was it like in the press box? You were covering the event.
We could feel the music. You couldn't hear it so much as you could feel it. The bass in the press box was it was rattling. It shook everything up there. If you had a cup of water sitting on the end of your table, watch out, man. That thing was going to go. It was loud.
It was loud, and it goes to show you too that it's going to be really refreshing, Matt, when the Raiders get here and we have, I think, true show professionals who work TV and work big events every weekend, because, in the NFL, basically every weekend's like a bowl game. It's so huge, the impact and the amount of people you have out there. So, but we'll get to that. But great game yesterday and fantastic matchup. So I will congratulate the Bowl folks on that, the ESPN folks who do that. Reminder, we are streaming today worldwide on the radio.com app. If you don't have it, make sure you go get it. It's fantastic. You can get all your stations, including a lot of the folks we're going to have on today. Go subscribe and watch also to us on YouTube. So not only do we stream this live audio in all the ways that we always tell you, but we also do it on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube too, see, Matt, here's my mini Bo Jackson, the Funko guy I told you about. So you can see him over my shoulder.
Bo knows.
He's there.
Remember that? Remember those commercials?
Oh,
those
yeah, those are great stuff. And there's always lively listener viewer chat over there as well, so make sure you check it out. We're also on Facebook Live, Periscope via our Twitter handle, and on Twitch, so you can watch us as we do the show. As always, check out our website, silverandblacktoday.com. We cover the Raiders like no one else in Las Vegas, so make sure you head over to silverandblacktoday.com. We have yet another insanely busy and informative show today. just crazy the week that was in Raider Nation. Other sports radio stations talk about the Raiders, but we're going to go deeper like no one else does. We have just so much to talk about, including the state of the Raiders in Oakland. Is Christmas Eve going to be their last game? We'll find out and talk about that as well. In the first hour, we're going to start out a little backward from how we usually do things on the show. Jay Morrison, great writer for The Athletic Cincinnati, will be with us. He'll break down the 5-8 Bengals for us and tell us if Marvin Lewis is again on the hot seat. I think that's just tradition, right? Isn't it, Matt? Marvin Lewis on the hot seat?
I don't understand how he's even there anymore. I mean,
playoffs 5 years in a row, I guess.
It's like being so satisfied with absolute mediocrity. It's amazing to me that Marvin Lewis is still the head coach there. At some point, you would think you just want to change a scenery with your football team, but I guess not.
Sort of like UNLV football, except they're not. That's not even mediocrity.
Mediocrity is nowhere near where UNLV football is.
But Jay's going to join us. Tough going for the Bengals at 5-8 without their starting quarterback Andy Dalton, of course, who's out for injury for the year, and a slew of other starters. Then our weekly contributor Vinny Bonsignori from The Athletic Los Angeles will join us. He's going to be our first stop on our tour of potential Raider home stadiums for 2019.
All right.
We'll ask him, why not L.A.?
The list is long.
And also get the latest on some Bay Area locations from our cousin Vinny. Also in the first hour, Raffi Melkonian, an antitrust and corporate litigator, 2005 graduate of Harvard Law School. It's not UNLV, but it's Harvard. And a partner at Wright, Close & Barger in Houston will call in on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line and break down just how frivolous this Oakland lawsuit is. And he'll tell us what the ins and outs of the 335-page lawsuit are. He'll put it into layman's terms for Raider Nation and for your hosts here as well, because we have no idea. He's a great legal mind, so you don't want to miss that. In the second hour, we start with the Dean of West Coast Sports Talk host. The legend Lee Hacksaw Hamilton joins us from San Diego. He'll tell us what his sources are saying about a possible 2019 season in the Chargers' old stadium, San Diego County Credit Union, a.k.a. Qualcomm, a.k.a. Jack Murphy.
The Murph. It's the Murph. I don't care what any... I don't care who else buys naming rights to that stadium. That's the Murph.
Yeah, I grew up there. I know. It's. I remember when it was San Diego Stadium, and that was just the name. It was generic, but that was it. Lee's tied in with the folks at the NFL, of course, but also with the city of San Diego County, and more. Another stellar segment with info you need to know on that stadium, possible stadium tour. Then Mike Meltzer, host of the Mad Radio Show on our sister Entercom station in Houston, Sports Radio 610. He'll fill us in on San Antonio, and if it has a real shot of being the home of the Raiders in 2019. Could the Alamo Dome be the home of the Black Hole next year? We'll get the latest from him on that one.
Yeah. Options everywhere, man.
Options.
Who doesn't want
Good
the
to have
Raiders?
options.
Other than the haters out there. We know they don't want
Dallas, some other Pittsburgh. Then we close out the show talking about the massive amount of other news in Raider Nation this week. The Reggie McKenzie dismissal and what his legacy may be for his time in Oakland. The Martavis Bryant suspension, the possible return of Donald Penn, and more. Another show, another gift from us to you, Raider Nation. This show is going to be one that blows your socks off for sure. Get some coffee, sit down, get ready, as we are your official Raiders pregame show today as the Silver and Black kick off at 10 a.m. Pacific against the Bengals. There you have it, Raider Nation. You are up to date here on the Silver and Black today. And one of the things we talk about all the time here, Matt, is how the Raiders continue to put down roots in the Southern Nevada community in Las Vegas around community events. And this Friday, we were out again, myself and our correspondent David Stepanian, our engineer today, too, who's with us. We were there for the second annual Toys for Tots drive at the Raider Image Store, which has now become, for me, since I've been 2 years in a row, you were there last year, now it's a holiday tradition for me to be at that event. It's a great thing to see.
Just another example of the Raiders out in the community already.
Yeah. And so we were there, and David Stepanian has a great story. I want to update you and bring you inside the Raiders Foundation in the community here in Las Vegas.
Christmas is almost here, and the Raiders are doing their part to bring holiday cheer to as many kids as possible. The organization hosted their second annual Toys for Tots at Town Square, Las Vegas, and did it in style by bringing former Raiders Jerry Robinson and Cliff Branch.
The key to it is that they're embracing each other. You know, this is a win-win situation here, man. I mean, this is the entertainment capital of the world here, man. The Raiders are here. It's official. The Raiders in 2020 will be the Las Vegas Raiders. And the people in the community here, man, I've heard stories since I've been here. People from other countries have come in here buying Raider stuff, either in the Raider image stores or whatever. It's Raider. And it's a win-win situation. I really truly believe, you know, since Mr. Foley brought the hockey team here, the Golden Knights, man, you know, the first one to bring a professional sports team here, now the city and the state of Nevada here have a professional football team with Mark Davis here. The city is just they're gonna grab a hold of this team because we're gonna grab a hold of them, and we're gonna walk down this turnaround, which is gonna have to take place as far as success together.
Fans were invited to meet and receive autographs from the former players by donating Christmas toys for children, and the retired Pro Bowlers were more than happy to be a part of the Christmas cheer.
Well, it means a lot to the Raiders because the Raiders have always built that if you got the community that's supporting you, you got an advantage right there. And it's very important for the Raider organization and the foundation of the Raiders to be in the community. Without the community, you don't get no support. So with the foundation and the Raiders coming to Vegas, it's very important for us to be in the community. And we're excited about it. It's moving real fast. Before you know it, 2020 will be here. The team will be here. The whole operation of the Las Vegas Raiders will be in Las Vegas.
To find out more about Toys for Tots and where to donate, visit toysfortots.com. For Silver and Black Today, I'm David Stepanian.
All right, David, thank you so much for that. And Matt, you know, if we think about, again, we talk about it all the time, as I mentioned, just what's going on here in the community and what the Raiders are doing. Another good example, and the holiday season obviously is a natural one for this type of thing as you do that. But really good to see folks out there. And, of course, fans got to come out to be able to meet Cliff Branch and Jerry Robinson. Fantastic. And the foundation, I mean, last week, there was like 3 events in town. Mm-hmm. We could only get to one of them. But, I mean, just crazy how busy they are already. Yeah,
you have them doing the Goody Two Shoes event last year that we were able to cover. The Toys for Tots thing is awesome. I mean, anytime this time of year is rough for a lot of people, so anytime you can get out there and help them out. We see the toy drive that happens here in town. We were at the kickoff luncheon for the Vegas Bowl the other day, and Chet Buchanan was the host, and he was talking about the toy drive that they do every year for his radio station, and it is the single largest, is what he was telling us, or the largest single site toy drive they do in the country.
Wow.
In Las Vegas that everybody assumes doesn't have community.
Wow.
I mean, that just goes to show you what it's like in this city and how important these kinds of things can be. And the Raiders still, 2 years away, were already out in front of it and getting out here and doing what they could.
And I know I see a lot of folks in Oakland talking about, boy, I hope the Raiders continue to do stuff in Oakland after they move to Las Vegas. And I think they will. I have not talked to anybody from the foundation about that specifically, but knowing the history of going back to 61 in Oakland, I would imagine that they will do that. Quick shout out to, I'm wearing today a Beast Mode hat. It's got the Oakland A's colors, which is really interesting. But I got this hat. I was in the Beast Mode store before the event. Sharon from My Creative Mind Catering, who's doing the charity event, they're taking donations at Beast Mode. Gift cards primarily would be great. But if you go down there, they'll actually give you 24% off anything you buy by just donating something to that cause for some really great students who are doing well in the community here, and we want to make it a special holiday for them. So make sure you go out and do that.
Why Oakland A's colors, though?
Because Marshawn's from Oakland.
No,
I did.
Why
that's,
did
that's,
you?
That's the hat they gave me.
Oh, it was a gift. All right.
It was.
That's okay.
Well, I donated. So they, as a part of the donation, they gave me a hat, which I thought was pretty nice. And I wasn't about to say, hey, could I get one? Maybe. It's like, do you have a silver and black one, or do you have like
all right. It's
Oakland-centric,
so you're okay.
Do you have a blue and sand color since I'm a Padres fan?
No, they don't
Probably
do that anymore.
All right. Well, we have burned through this first segment already, but when we come back, we're going to be joined by Jay Morrison from the Athletic Cincinnati. He's going to break down the Raiders and the Bengals today and tell us where that team is at 5-8. and what the Raiders can look for. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio in Las Vegas.
A union we can count on.
A. Troiano.
This is Mark Bedane, president of the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Indeed you are. Thank you, Mark. I'm sure he had a busy week, Matt.
Man, he's had a busy 2 years already.
Yeah. How many times did he have to say no comment last week, right? But we are going to switch gears now. We're going to talk about some of the other stuff later, of course, with the possible pending temporary move of the Raiders after the lawsuit last week. But there is a game this week, folks. That's right, coming up here at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The Raiders are in Cincinnati to take on the 5-8 Bengals. And joining us now on the Attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line is the Athletic Cincinnati's Jay Morrison. Jay, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, I'm great. How are you guys?
Doing
well.
fantastic. So, Jay, we every year it seems like we get to this time of the year, and one of the question marks is always, how hot is the seat for Marvin Lewis? And Marvin has been there and continues to, let's face it, the team gets in the playoffs, and they seem to do enough, and a lot of the speculation seems to come outside of Cincinnati. What's the current situation with this team, where they're at, and with Marvin Lewis?
Well, the seat couldn't be any hotter from where the fans stand, but the only man that matters is owner Mike Brown, and he doesn't talk. No one above Marvin in this organization does interviews, so it's really just speculation at this point. But you have to think, at least I think, everything is still in limbo. It's going to depend on these last three games. If they get hot like they did last year, I could see Marvin coming back next year. This team, they went into the year with the second youngest roster in the league. They have 15 guys on IR, and I know everybody says that's not an excuse, but you have to think that plays into where they are right now. If they were to run the table and finish 8-8, they would actually improve by one game over last year. And I just think Mike Brown's a guy, he doesn't like to make change. He's comfortable with Marvin, and Mike Brown's not getting any younger. Let's not forget that. If he blows this thing up and brings in a new coach, maybe it's Dave Shula again, and they've set the franchise back 5 or 6 years. There's no guarantee you're going to find a Sean McVay. So I just think it's one of those devil you know kind of things where, yeah, he knows Marvin may not be the best option, but he knows that they probably have a better chance of winning with Marvin than rolling the dice and bringing in somebody new.
And Jay, Matt Gutierrez here, and thanks again for joining us this morning. Let's talk about the defense on the Bengals. Bengals defense over the last several years has been one of the better defenses in the league. You lose Paul Gunther, he goes to the Raiders. Raiders defense has been struggling all season long, starting with the trade of Khalil Mack. Bengals defense, surprisingly, the last rated defense in the NFL. How big of an impact was losing Paul Gunther on that team and the players that got comfortable in his system?
Well, I mean, if you remember, they weren't real good last year defensively, but yeah, Paul. Everybody here liked Paul. They were comfortable with his system. He basically was a seamless transition from when Mike Zimmer was here. He was Mike's linebackers coach, and then when Mike went to go coach the Vikings, Paulie G just stepped right in, became the defensive coordinator. It was a system that all these guys came up through, and then they go and they get Terrell Austin. He changes things around, and it just never clicked. He had him thinking too much. It was too much if this, then that. That when they fired him, that was one of the things Marvin did. Was Marvin's calling the plays now. If the Raider fans don't know that, but he's gone back to more basics, see it, react. There has been an improvement. The 4 games that Marvin is called the plays, that they're giving up about 5 or 6 fewer points per game. They're giving up about 100 yards fewer total yards per game. Their third down conversions allowed are way down. So there has been incremental improvement. They just haven't seen it in the end result on wins.
On the other side of the ball, much different look right now than what you expected at the start of the season. Andy Dalton's out. A.J. Green is out. You still have Joe Mixon back there, though. He's been running the ball really well. Raiders have really struggled to stop the run the entire season. Last week notwithstanding, the Steelers don't really throw the ball at all. So the numbers probably look good as far as rush defense goes. But how has Driscoll been able to step in there and hasn't been flashy, but been kind of a game manager as far as what he's been able to do at quarterback?
Yeah, that's just it. He's thrown a lot of short, high percentage passes. Hasn't made the big mistake yet. One thing that Bill Lazor, the offensive coordinator, talked about this week is they need to get the average yards per attempt up. He said in his mind that's the most important stat in football when you're talking offensive football, and they just haven't taken any deep shots. And I think you're going to see that today because Joe Mixon's been terrific all year, and it's just a matter of, they're down to the Browns 28-7 right off the bat. They're down to the Saints 35-7 right off the bat. When they're falling so far behind in games, they can't use Joe. And last week we saw it. They stayed close with San Diego. They stayed committed to Joe Mixon, gave him a career-high 26 rushes. He had 111 yards. That's going to be the formula today. Pound it with Mixon and then try to use the play action to take some shots over the top against this Raiders defense.
How's the weather out there in Cincinnati for today's game? Is this going to be one of those, traditional December cold weather kind of games, or are they catching a break out there?
No, it's inching up close to 50 right now. It's not raining, but it's kind of dark and misty and damp. I don't think weather's going to be a factor at all today.
Yeah, and Jay, this is Scott Gilbranson again. This rival, there's actually a little bit of a rivalry here, and the Bengals, especially recently, have had a better time. What's your mood? What's the mood of the team going into this game against the Raiders? The Raiders, clearly not one of the better teams in the league, one of the worst teams in the league, but they have been playing better as of late, and with that defense and the trouble that Cincinnati's had, and Derek Carr suddenly surging and finding his confidence in John Gruden's system, how do they feel about facing this Raiders offense?
Yeah, I think they're just looking for any kind of win they can get. Doesn't matter who it's against. Losing 5 in a row, 7 of 8 after they started 4-1. It's been a surprisingly loose locker room through this losing stretch. And there's a lot of young guys on this team, as I mentioned earlier, second youngest roster in the league, and I think they see big picture. I don't want to say they're giving up on the season, but they're mathematically alive. And every time you talk to somebody about the season, they keep saying that, hey, we're not out of this yet. Nobody wants to talk about 2019 yet. But I just think reality says that they need to start looking ahead to next year, and we even saw that last week. They started rotating at one of the guard spots with a guy that has only played about 20 snaps all year just to see what they have in him. Their rookie linebacker, they took him in the third round. Malik Jefferson hasn't played at all until last week. They started working him in. So I do think they are starting to kind of turn the focus to 2019 a little bit.
Yeah. We mentioned Marvin Lewis in the proverbial hot seat that he's always on. The other guy that's always in that conversation is Andy Dalton. And like we mentioned, he's been hurt. He's been out for a month. But talking about the future and looking forward with this team and what they could be doing, is Andy Dalton still part of the longer-term plan at quarterback for the Bengals?
I think that's what they're looking at right now with Driscoll, to see if he can be a bridge guy, if they can go get a quarterback high in the draft this year and maybe start grooming him under Driscoll. I still would be surprised if they went that route. It's not the MO of this organization to cut guys that are under contract. Andy's still under contract for 2 more years. He's never taken this team to the mountaintop, so to speak, never won a playoff game, but he's still a really good quarterback, and he is still a really cheap quarterback when you look at what some of these other guys are making. And it's a team-friendly contract right now. I think he rides it out. I think he's the Bengals quarterback for the next 2 years, and they may draft a guy later, like a 4th or 5th round guy, kind of like they did with McCarron a few years ago, just to see what they have there. But I'd be really surprised if they parted ways with Andy Dalton. But again, the caveat there is if Marvin goes and they blow this thing up, who knows what the new coach is thinking is going to be.
Again, we're talking to Jay Morrison from The Athletic in Cincinnati. And Jay, one of the guys that I've really enjoyed watching this year, because I always love stories of redemption and comeback, and Tyler Boyd fits that mold. Of course, 2 seasons ago, he had 600 yards receiving. Last year, just over 200. And, of course, before Dalton got hurt, him and Dalton were having a great year. And it looks like he should reach today with, I think, about 10 yards, 1,000 yards receiving. Talk about Boyd and what's been the difference for him in this comeback season.
Yeah, you mentioned last year 200-some yards. I think there was like 115 in the last 2 games. And he caught that pass, the game-winning 4th and 12, 49-yard touchdown pass to beat the Ravens last year on the final play, knocked the Ravens out. And that really just was a huge confidence booster and really kind of just jump-started him into this season. And he's been terrific from going back to the spring to OTAs. They cut Brandon LaFell because of Tyler Boyd, the way he was performing in training camp. It's been all about confidence with him. He had such a great rookie year. It wasn't just the the total yards, but he led the NFL in third down receptions as a rookie. Last year, he was a healthy scratch for a game. He had the legal incident where one of his buddies wrecked his car, and they found some a vape pen and some marijuana oil and that kind of stuff in there. And then it turned out he was clear that none of that was his. He just let bad decision to let a buddy use the car. So just a really rocky year last year. The touchdown at the end of the year kind of put all that behind. And, yeah, he's been terrific this year.
Jay Morrison from The Athletic in Cincinnati. Jay, thanks for being with us today.
All right, great talking to you.
All
Thanks,
right,
Jay.
take care. All right, we are going to step aside. We'll come back and we'll talk to Vinny Bonsignori from The Athletic Los Angeles about the Raiders possibly playing in Los Angeles. Is it possible? You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back, Las Vegas. Good morning. As we get set for the Bengals hosting the Raiders, your future Las Vegas Raiders. People in Oakland hate when I say that, but that's what it is.
They don't even have to stop giving them a city title at this point.
Yes,
just the Raiders until they get here. It's a mess.
Oakland/Los Angeles/Oakland/Las Vegas. It's better than the El Toro Chargers. But anyway, we are back, and as always, joining us on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line is our good friend and amazing writer for the Athletic Los Angeles, and that, of course, is Vinny Bonsignore. Vinny, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. Always remember Al Davis wanted it to be the Raiders. So,
yes.
They have a what they feel is a worldwide fan base and brand, and so you're right to say one city over the other. Just keep it the Raiders for right now. I mean, we know that next year that might truly be the case.
Well, that's what we're going to talk to you about today too, right? Is the fact that we don't know as of right now where the Raiders are going to play next year because of this lawsuit up in Oakland. And we're talking to one of those really intelligent guys that went to law school, didn't go to journalism school like you and I did, Vinny. But he's going to tell us about the lawsuit. But what we want to talk to you about today, because of your connections in the industry, and of course you covered the relocation of the Chargers and the Raiders to L.A. and to Las Vegas as closely as anybody. We want to find out, though, and focus with you because you're in Los Angeles. You know, some people have mentioned, well, boy, L.A. would be perfect. You have the fan base there. And for all the reasons that I've said a million times, it won't happen. But just for everybody's edification, Vinny, why is Los Angeles not even in consideration to host the Raiders for 1 year?
Well, I mean, first of all, where are they going to play? Number two, you do have two teams here in Los Angeles, and as the Chargers are showing right now, it's hard enough at this point in their Los Angeles life to get fans on a consistent basis to support them at their current home. I think that the league recognizes, look, we're back in Los Angeles. The Rams were here for 49 years or 46 years at one point, 49 I think it was. But and the Chargers are making their first entry into Los Angeles. They're in year 2 of that process, and we all know how powerful and popular the Raiders are in LA. So why disrupt the progress that the Chargers are making and the progress that the Rams are making in building their fan bases, which for the league, that's a really important for them to nail that Los Angeles down as a Rams and Chargers NFL town. So to send anybody else into LA during that process probably wouldn't be ideal.
And Vinny, one of the things that we keep hearing from a lot from fans and social media out there and things like that is Arizona and Santa Clara with Levi Stadium. I've always been on the side of I really don't think they're going to be sharing an NFL stadium with another team next year for a multitude of reasons, but one of which is the way that the Raiders travel. And it's kind of the same way in L.A., how you don't want to bring them into that market and kind of trump those teams. We've seen the Raider fans go down to San Francisco and take over. We've seen them go to Arizona. They went down there this year and took over that stadium. Do you think there's any shot that they're going to share with another NFL team this year or next season?
I'm not ruling anything out at this point. All options are on the table, and they're going to pick the one that they feel best suits, their needs. And they have a season to play. They have goals in mind. They have objectives in mind. So they want to do something that's going to put their team in the best possible position to succeed. But then also, to help bridge them to their new home. So if there's a location out there, Oakland is still first and foremost. That's where they would like to be. They feel like they owe that to their fans up there, and logistically it makes the most sense for them right now. But if that's no longer an option, or if that becomes ceases to become an option, then they're going to try, I'm sure, to be someplace that helps them not just for 2019 but for 2020 as well. And yeah, Phoenix actually makes a little bit of sense. their proximity to Las Vegas and their proximity to a big chunk of their fan base, not just in Las Vegas, but there's in Arizona. There's obviously fans in Southern California. That's a short ride down to Phoenix to go watch a football game. So I wouldn't rule that out as well. And I don't think that would jeopardize the Cardinals necessarily. I mean, you're not going to turn Cardinal fans into Raider fans in 1 year. They're fine with their fan base there. And I think that they would understand, maybe just being a good neighbor, and if the Raiders, if that's the best option, then allowing them to play at their stadium, 8 games in 2019.
And again, we're talking to Vinny Bonsignore with the Athletic Los Angeles. Now, Vinny's, I've heard a lot of folks, and clearly the best thing to happen would be for them to stay in Oakland next year and finish it out before the relocation is official and their stadium is done here in Las Vegas and they come here. At the same time, I understand Mark Davis's point of view. It's like, why do I want to pay somebody who's suing me, right? But he has, and I know you have good sources all over the place, he has intimated that, hey, you know what, for the fans, I might be willing to do that. But, and we're going to talk to an attorney in the next segment about all this lawsuit stuff. But with that, there could be a danger if you're paying the city of Oakland money to stay in a stadium and they're suing you. There's some issues there, and you talked about some of the areas in Northern California, and it seems like everything we hear out of the Raider organization and the NFL is that Mark Davis is opposed to playing in Levi Stadium where the 49ers play. Why? What is that reasoning? Have you heard why? What are your folks telling you?
I just have always gotten the sense that, nothing against Levi Stadium, but the location and the stadium itself, and it just doesn't feel Raiders, and it never did. And I've been there a number of times now, and nothing against the 49ers or the Yorks or anyone that was a part of putting that together, but it's just missing something there. And when I think of the Bay Area, I don't think of Santa Clara. I know technically it is part of the Bay Area, but it just seems so removed from the heart and soul of the Bay, and it seems so, just the stadium itself, it just doesn't have a lot of soul, and I've gotten that from, a lot of NFL people that have been there. It's like there's something missing, and it's just not a Raider, doesn't have a Raider feel to it, and I think that's, first and foremost, one of the reasons why they would rather someplace else.
And you mentioned a minute ago that this is a case where the Raiders are only going to be playing 8 games in whichever market it is they move to. Is there a possibility that could only be 6 games? We've already seen them play in Mexico City a couple of times. We've seen them play in London a couple of times. Could the NFL go, you know what, we're going to put them in Mexico City and London next year and just try to make this as seamless as possible?
Not ruling that out, but, I know that, again, they have a season to play, and I think they want to try to make it as normal as possible. And 2 overseas games or 2 international games would disrupt that a little bit. But, if it has to be, then maybe it has to be. I think that they would like to avoid that, not having to disrupt things too much. But, this is going to be an unusual situation if the Raiders can't get things squared away in Oakland, or if Oakland continues to pursue, the lawsuit and puts the Raiders in that kind of a position. But dealing with a not normal situation might mean some not normal remedies to fix it.
And Vinny, the one thing I want to ask you about too, because you have impeccable folks that you talk with at the league, and I think unfairly, actually, the team is getting a lot of heat for this. And I know some people are just upset because they're leaving Oakland, and so they're going to be mad at anything Mark Davis does. But in reality, the city of Oakland here is the one who created this issue of not knowing where they might play next year through the lawsuit. Now, what about for the NFL? How quickly you have the Super Bowl, you have the playoffs. The NFL's focused on their key time of the year, which is right now. But how quickly are you hearing that the NFL wants to resolve this so that they can make the schedule and get things moving?
Well, soon, and I would think that January and February are 2 months that to whoever is involved in that type of a process is going to get into that process and try to get it resolved as quickly as possible. Certainly by the owners' meetings in March, they want to be able to have something firm and something locked in so that everyone else that is going to be involved in this, and it's an enormous undertaking when you think about it, not just the the schedule maker, especially if they have to share a stadium with somebody. But then just, workers and the city getting, whatever city it might be, being involved and making sure that wherever they go, it's going to be up to, what if they go to San Diego, making sure that stadium is back up and running in a way that, fits the NFL and their needs. So there's a lot that goes into it, so sooner rather than later. But I would imagine sometime before the owners' meeting, they have to be locked and loaded.
Vinny, thanks as always. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio. When we come back, Raffi Melkonian, attorney from Houston, will join us on the lawsuit. Don't go anywhere.
'Tis the season to rock ugly sweaters and ice skate. Ronald
Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM.
All right, welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio.
You see what you did?
I know.
You jinxed it, man.
I know. I was talking about how we've had such good luck with guests this year, and a little snafu this morning. So Raffi Melkonian was going to be with us, and we're unable to bring him to you. But we are going to devote this segment, Matt, to the lawsuit, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Of course, look at this picture, by the way. I'm looking at
that's
the San Francisco Chronicle story on the lawsuit.
That was almost 2 years. That was in March of 2016.
Yes.
When or was 2016. So it was over 2 years ago now. When they announced the Raiders were officially going to be moving to Vegas, and I was out there. I had my Raiders flag with me, and a photographer for the Associated Press started following me around, just snapping photos. And those things will not die. Every article that shows up around the nation that is in relation to the Raiders coming to Vegas, and my photo seems to pop up on there. Most of them are negative, too. That's what drives me nuts. A lot of it is bashing Vegas or bashing the move or something like that.
Well, and when you get into like an AP stream or one of those other international type news organizations, like the image never leaves.
No.
And so,
and there's several of them, and they won't go away.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember that day too, driving down Las Vegas Boulevard and seeing the Union, the local 872, a proud sponsor of Silver and Black Today, was out there. You were out there. Tony Cardasco was out there doing something for somebody.
He was just hanging out with me.
He was just hanging out with you, trying to get in the picture.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that in itself was interesting because Matt's picture. If you see any of those pictures, if you see the guy in the Raider shirt with the Raider flag in Las Vegas in front of the sign, it's Matt.
Yeah, it's me.
It's just that's the way it goes.
My son likes it because he can Google me. He thinks it's awesome that he can Google me.
My kids do that all the time too. They're always like fascinated that if I Google your name, these pictures come up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. My teacher Googled you. I'm like, why is your teacher Googling me? That's kind of odd. Yeah. But nonetheless, so the lawsuit.
Don't at me, bro.
Yeah, the lawsuit. It's filed on Tuesday about the relocation. This had been rumored for a long time. And in essence, Matt, what the Raiders are claiming, right, is that the team is moving illegally to Las Vegas, and that everything it's done to do so is illegal. And so and not only are they suing the team, and here's another key distinction. They're not just suing the team; they are suing every team in the NFL, including
good luck
the league. And I'm gonna show. I just put on another camera. So for those of you watching on Facebook, if you're not watching on Facebook or YouTube, shame on you. But you'll see. I'm adding a camera here so you can kind of see the picture I'm talking about. Because I think once people see it, they'll see that. Let me get this here. There it is. Okay. Where is it?
Yeah, and that's one of the secondary ones. That's not even the main one that we happen to see all the time.
Right. Anyway, I'm having trouble with that camera, so forget it. But anyway, so we want to talk about the lawsuit because a couple things. And Raffi, who couldn't join us, and hopefully we'll get him on again to talk about this, maybe on the podcast this week. But what Raffi has said, too, is that, look, what they're counting on with this lawsuit is really very, very thin. And that is not only is it illegal for what they did, but also that they're in essence using a law, the Sherman Act. They're using a law that the Raiders used to sue the NFL when they moved to L.A. And so you have to ask yourself this question. I understand Oakland being upset. Okay, I understand it. But the Raiders, if you look at the history, and you can call us apologists all you want, I really don't care. The haters are going to hate, doesn't matter. But the reality of the situation is this. There was never really good faith efforts by the city of Oakland to keep the team there. They didn't want public money, as the lawsuit claims. They wanted to develop the site where the Oakland Coliseum is, and they weren't given that. So that alone is one of the issues. The second issue is they use really inflammatory language that I'm shocked is in a legal briefing, Matt. They call the NFL the billion dollar boys club,
right? Even
though there's several women owners. But I'm sure they're not offended.
None.
And then they claim that also that in essence it's a illegal cartel. like a drug cartel, that they're doing things and they're funneling money and all this kind of stuff. I just don't understand what they're going to gain other than some money. And I think that at the end of the day is what they want, is they just want to save a little face and get a little cash.
It could be as simple as the lease hasn't been paid off yet on the renovations for the Coliseum from when they moved back there in '95. Maybe they're just trying to get that out of the Raiders before they go. Obviously, there's a lot of bad blood there. I don't think they ever really wanted to lose the Raiders. I mean, I know there was a lot of back and forth with Libby Schaff up there, the mayor of Oakland, and the problems with building on that site and getting a stadium done. But I don't think they ever wanted the Raiders to leave. It came down to, if we're going to build a stadium, we choose the A's over the Raiders, and I'm sure the A's had a hand in all of this. But it's not like when the Colts left, and when they left Baltimore and went to Indianapolis, and everybody woke up in the morning and everybody was gone. It's not that kind of thing. This has been a process over the course of quite a few years now, starting with trying to get the Chargers and the Raiders in a stadium together down in Southern California.
Right.
That didn't go through, so they went on and explored another option. That option happened to be Las Vegas, and Vegas came through with the stadium funding and everything that comes with that, and now they're moving. It's a completely different scenario than some of the other ones that we've seen, and I just don't think that the city has a leg to stand on.
Right, and in the lawsuit, too, alleging that Mark Davis benefited from the relocation fees and that the owners shared on all these relocation fees. That's where this kind of organized crime allegation comes from, that the NFL never really wanted to keep the Raiders in Oakland because all the owners wanted more money. Now, yes, money's money, and owners will take money freely, but at the same time, it's not like these guys, were negative in their checking accounts and they needed more money. They were looking at what's the best interest of the league and the best interest of the franchise, and the Raiders have not had the opportunity to have their own stadium or do anything up there. So,
are the Dolphins on that? Are they suing the Dolphins too? Because that was the one team that abstained from the yes vote, right?
Yes. Now that's true. And so to me, I don't know. I mean, I don't want the Raiders to leave Oakland next year. I want them to stay for their final year. I want the fans to get their farewell tour. I really do. I think that's the best way to do it.
I would prefer that. It would be nice, especially like you mentioned, a farewell tour. You could kind of gear the season towards that, because as of right now, it's Christmas Eve and that's it. I mean, you don't really have time to prepare. It could be the last game, so it'd be better if they just actually knew what was going on.
All right. Well, another segment in the books, and we're working on getting Raffi Melkonian on the air here. Just heard back from him, so hopefully we're going to do that coming up in the next hour. At the top of this hour, after this break, Lee Hamilton from San Diego joins us. He'll tell us whether or not San Diego was a possible landing spot for the Raiders next year. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Welcome back to another Football Sunday here on the Silver and Black Today, CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM in Las Vegas. Don't forget, silverandblacktoday.com, our website, where we have Raiders news all the time. Some good pieces up there, some previews of today's game against the Bengals, including last week we did a breakdown on Carl Joseph. Our guy Chris Reed did that, as well as some other really entertaining and informative information. So don't forget the website. And don't forget, you can also stream this show. If you're listening on the air or you're listening on radio.com, thank you. But you can also stream us on Facebook and YouTube as well. So make sure you do that, too, and you can watch in and see Matt's perfectly combed hair today because he is not wearing a hat. And, Matt, we've had some people say, oh, when Matt's on the air, I can't see him because he's got his hat on, because you stand when we do the show. For those of you watching, I'm sitting, Matt's standing, and if he's got a hat on, then his head's down and you can't see his face. And now we had people complain about that.
Just listen to my voice, guys. That's all you need to do. Just listen.
Just listen to the dulcet tones of Matt Gutierrez.
The sultry sounds.
Speaking of sultry, yesterday we were talking a little bit about the Las Vegas Bowl, Matt, because there was a big event here in town. Mm-hmm. Sam Boyd Stadium cannot host the Raiders, just flat out. Anyway, but they had these entertainment acts from Vegas, and I had these guys behind me they were in from L.A. They had no dog in the race amongst the teams. But they were like on a boys' weekend to Vegas.
I know where you're going with this, I think.
Yes. And they had these guys from one of the shows in Vegas, and these guys are amazing athletes, let me say, because they're strong as hell, and they're balancing each other. I can't even explain what they were doing. But one guy stands up, and this is no offense to anybody. I'm just going to tell you what the guy said. I'm not saying this. He just said, I don't understand this homoerotic entertainment at a football game. That's what he said.
I knew exactly where you were going. I can't. Is it Ka or?
Oh yeah,
it's one of the search shows, and these two guys who look like bodybuilders are out there. Yeah, and they're essentially using their core strength to balance each other somehow and hold each other up in handstands or whatnot. And it seems really out of place at a halftime performance or a game. Obviously, in the show, it's amazing, but
right,
yeah.
Well, and it was supposed to be highlighting the entertainment value in Las Vegas, and I get that. But, oh well, that's just the way it goes. Anyway, it was an entertaining game yesterday, at least through the third quarter. We go out now on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line to the legend himself down in San Diego, and that, of course, is my radio idol. I have to say that every time, Lee. We bring in Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. How you doing this morning?
Come on, don't blame me for all the things you've done with your career, but thank you for the compliment. Hey, gentlemen, how are you?
Doing great.
Doing great, Lee. All right, so a busy week in Raider Nation, of course, for many reasons, but the leading, I think, news item, clearly, because it's explosive in that it means the team may be playing somewhere else next year, which was supposed to be their last year in Oakland. But the lawsuit filed by the City of Oakland, one of the spots that everyone talks about is, of course, San Diego, with the Chargers having picked up camp and gone up to Los Angeles to play in a soccer stadium. They now have San Diego County Credit Union's a stadium where the Aztecs play. And so people are looking at as a natural spot for the Raiders to go. It's a former NFL city. We all know, Lee, and you know from all the times with arrest records and all kinds of issues with fights that we had in San Diego when I was growing up there with the Raiders coming into town. But there's a lot of Raider fans. What are you hearing from your folks in San Diego about the possibility of the Raiders coming there?
Well, those of us in the media have surmised that it could be a potential landing spot. But in terms of the leadership of the city of San Diego, Mayor Kevin Faulkner, City Council, no conversation at all, no comments at all. Does not seem to be any energy at all. Now, there's still games to be played and playoffs to be done. So maybe this discussion is going to happen at the end of the season, going towards the off season. It makes sense to me. I guess the question that I have to pose is, where's the NFL in all this? Are they going to allow a third team to come back into Southern California even on a one-year interim basis? Or is the league really going to try to steer Mark Davis out of the Oakland Coliseum and put him in Santa Clara, even though Mark has publicly said, I'm not really interested? I don't understand the whole Oakland scenario. Why the City of Oakland is suing the Raiders and the NFL. I read part of the 49-page lawsuit, and it mentioned 7 different violations of the bylaws. I think the bottom line at the end of the day is the City of Oakland did not have the economic wherewithal to creatively come up with a way to fund a stadium to keep the Raiders there. They've worked on this for a long period of time. Now, each of these franchises that have transferred have had different environments. San Diego, after years and years of getting nothing accomplished, actually came to the table with a fully funded proposal to be put up for a vote, and Dean Spanos, the Chargers owner, refused to come to the table to negotiate. City of St. Louis, which has already filed its lawsuit, and it's going through the court process. I think hearings or maybe testimony starts in 2019. City of St. Louis may have real firm footing to stand on in their lawsuit because they did everything the NFL requested them to do in terms of land acquisition, in terms of actual city, county, state co-funding, coupled with what the league would have thrown in, coupled with what they wanted Kroenke to throw in. They went through the entire list of boxes and checked them all off, and then Kroenke refused to go to the table and negotiate.
Yeah.
So to me, what happened in St. Louis appears to be slam dunk violation of the NFL bylaws. San Diego still would have had to go out through a vote, but the ownership of the Chargers absolutely refused to sit and talk, and it never did get finally to a vote here. That had they negotiated, I firmly believe it would have passed. But because Spanos refused to negotiate, and then Spanos put his own item on the ballot and then got defeated, it was a stupid proposal. I don't know that San Diego has a leg to stand on, and I don't think Oakland has any legs to stand on at all to hold Mark Davis to that market because the city and the county is so economically depressed.
And Lee, that's the thing too. I think all three of those situations different, and I think you're right about St. Louis. And we were going to have earlier, and he's going to join us at the bottom of the hour, Raffi Melkonian from Houston. He's a antitrust lawyer, and he's actually been very critical of the Oakland lawsuit. Doesn't understand it. Versus the St. Louis lawsuit, which you mentioned has some standing.
Now, Lee, let me ask you this: let's assume that the Raiders do go to San Diego next season, and the NFL lets them go down there, Southern California, all of that. What's the feeling like in San Diego if the Raiders were to play there? Are the fans going to show up from the area that aren't already Raider fans, or is this just going to be a case of like we saw in the Raiders' last game there at Qualcomm, where all of L.A. pretty much descended on Qualcomm itself? Do San Diego fans still want to go out and see football, even if it is the Raiders?
Historically, Raider fans, guys, have always traveled. I don't care where you play your games. You put it on the moon, Raider fan will find a way to get there. That being said, there'll be probably, if this were to happen, there would be a significant number of Raider fans who are in San Diego. Obviously, a pile of them would come from L.A., and some would travel down from Oakland. And so I think they'd probably draw 40,000 a game, which is okay. I don't know that they're knocking them dead in Oakland right now. But in terms of Charger fan who is still bitter, I don't think Charger fan is going to go see the Raiders play, even if the Raiders are playing here. But that being said, if you draw 40,000 a home game, it'll be good support for Derek Carr. I think what complicates the process is it's such a bad team right now, and they are now in the beginning of the throes of what I think is going to be a long rebuilding program. So I have a hard time thinking that they'd draw 65 or 70,000 just because the NFL's back in town, because this community is really bitter at the NFL, and it's obviously tremendously bitter at the Chargers and the Spanos family, although they love Phillip Rivers.
Yes.
And
who still calls San Diego home.
Exactly, and there are a lot of people here who are really torn After that Thursday night win in Kansas City, and I was writing a column for my website, and you can check it out. It's a one man's opinion column on my website, leehacksawhamilton.com. But I was torn writing the column because I was excited for what Rivers did. It's a Hall of Fame career and all the things they did where they've hardly ever had any success before at Arrowhead Stadium. And then I thought to myself, I got a knot in the pit of my stomach writing this column, being excited because I am so peeved at what the Spanos family did to our community after 55 years of loyal service. So, and I think I echo the sentiments of a ton of people. They watch the games down here. Their TV ratings are not what they used to be, but they do watch the games. But I tend to think it's more hate watching than it is watching to root for Philip Rivers.
And Lee, I mailed in my Charger fandom about 4 years ago. I knew what was going to happen. I just felt like it was going to happen, and so that was as a fan. For me, that was it. But can you imagine? And we're going to have you on again real soon to talk about the AFC playoff race. But can you imagine if it somehow happened and the Raiders were playing in San Diego next year and the Chargers come into town as the visitor? It would be so surreal. I can't even imagine.
Well, the last home game that the Chargers played the Raiders here, it was all silver and black.
Yeah.
By that point, the emotional divorce with the fans here in San Diego had already taken place. So that last home game here at SDCCU Stadium was like a Raider home game. And obviously we saw what happened as bad as the product has been that John Gruden's dragged out on the field this year. When the Raiders played in Carson at the StubHub Center, that was all silver and black.
It was. Yeah.
And the most stunning thing to me is Los Angeles has yet to put its arms around Philip Rivers and that really good offensive football team.
Yeah, a possible Super Bowl contender, and they're still not showing up. Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. Lee, thanks again. We'll have you on here in a few weeks to look at the playoffs.
Yeah, check the website. You'll get a kick out of the column I wrote, and there's other Raiders stuff on there too. Good to talk to you guys.
All right,
thanks,
Lee Hacksaw Hamilton. You can check him out, leehacksawhamilton.com. We'll be back right after this on Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio.
on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
All right, you are indeed. Welcome back. CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM here in the City of Lights in the city of Las Vegas, Nevada. Not New Mexico. There is a Las Vegas, New Mexico. Hope the people down there are doing well.
I just told my kids about that, believe it or not. They had no idea there was another one out there.
Did you? All right, well, we are on our tour of possible locations the Raiders may end up next year if they have to leave Oakland due to the lawsuit. And Steve over on our YouTube page, and I think, Steve, I was conversing with you perhaps on Twitter this week. I actually like an out, and we're not going to talk about this now because we're going to focus on San Antonio, but Salt Lake City, believe it or not. Salt Lake City. Just keep an eye on that. I know it's an outlier, and maybe I'm trying to sell it too hard, but another city that is more than capable, I believe, of hosting the Raiders in 2019 if they need a place to play is San Antonio, Texas. The Alamo Dome is down there, and the Alamo Dome actually just recently is underway with a renovation, actually, with some things down there, which we're going to show some video of here on the Simulcast. So if you want to see some of that, do that. We're going to head out now on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line and bring in Mike Meltzer of 610 Sports Radio in Houston. Mike, how you doing this morning?
Hey, guys. Good morning. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us on your weekend. I know the Texans played yesterday, 10 wins. They're doing pretty well.
Indeed. Yes, first time in the Bill O'Brien era. It looked a little scary for a while. They didn't play that well, but, ultimately in the NFL, as long as you win, that's the important part. So people are feeling pretty decent in Houston this morning.
They are. So what we want to talk to you, because I know you are following the situation very closely, Sports Radio 610 in Houston. You can also catch that on the radio.com app along with our show in the Entercom family. Now, Mike, when you look at the possibility of the Raiders going to San Antonio built that dome. They've always wanted to try to play in the game. They've had Final Fours and all of that stuff. What's the latest? What are you hearing from the folks in San Antonio about perhaps them actively pursuing the Raiders and making it a temporary home?
Well, it certainly seems like that's what San Antonio would love to have happen because, this is one of those situations where everybody knows the deal going in, right, that it's going to be a year, it's going to be temporary because obviously the Raiders are in Las Vegas in 2020, and so there isn't this, idea of, a team could come and a team could stay. This is a pretty clear-cut, black and white, no pun intended kind of situation here, with San Antonio and that possibility. What I would wonder basically is, if Mark Davis this week is already talking about, I don't like the turf in San Antonio, the Alamo Dome. It seems like such a specific critique to make of a decision like this that it's almost like by virtue of him saying that, he's ruling out San Antonio. You guys know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're talking about a one-year situation, and I mean, I don't even know what NFL owners think of various, stadiums' turf. And now that's his specific critique of San Antonio. It just makes me think that, if they're forced to have another solution for 2019, that San Antonio is not something that Mark Davis prefers.
Well, Michael, Matt Gutierrez here. I know that he does not like field turf. That's the big hang-up for him. When they were going through the stadium plans out here with UNLV playing on a field turf instead of natural grass, they're doing two fields now for the new stadium. The natural grass will just kind of slide in, much like it does in Arizona, and it'll go over the top of the artificial surface. But I wanted to ask you about the tone in San Antonio as far as buzz goes with the Raiders, because when they got denied to have the stadium with the Chargers, and it was the Chargers and the Rams that ultimately were going to L.A., and the Raiders were looking for a new home, San Antonio was one of the cities that was in the running. Was there ever a buzz out there that really wanted to bring in the Raiders? Because you've got the Texans that are close, you've got the Cowboys that are close, and we know what kind of fandom they have. Were people excited about possibly getting the Raiders?
I think they would be, but I think in San Antonio there's this sense, since the Alamo Dome was built a while ago to attract NFL football, that there's almost like this, this idea of basically the football being it's out there, but it's constantly like a Lucy and Charlie thing being pulled away from the people of San Antonio. That they're like, okay, well, here is another situation in which we possibly will get our hopes up, and then all of a sudden, our hopes will be dashed. I think that people love football in San Antonio, and a lot of people may not realize this, but San Antonio is the 7th largest city in the country based on population. Even though the perception may not seem like that, it's a big football area. I would say, obviously, it's a Cowboys town based on history and, training camp over the last couple of decades, all that kind of stuff. So I think people would be excited. I just think at this point they're like, there are 32 teams. It's an even number. There's been no buzz about NFL expansion, just teams kind of moving around. It doesn't seem like there are any teams that are going to, if they move, people are talking more about London and places like that as opposed to San Antonio. So I think they care about football, and they've kind of chosen their teams and sides, and some are casual fans. They just think like, we've heard this talk enough in the past where it hasn't really panned out, that why would we get our hopes up again for something else?
We're talking with Mike Meltzer of 610 Sports Radio in Houston about the Raiders possibly playing at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio. Now, Mike, one of the issues here, too, is you are, like you said, San Antonio primarily a Cowboys town, but there's 2 teams in Texas already. You have the Texans in Houston, where you're at, and you have the Cowboys.
Yep.
What are you hearing from those organizations? How opposed would they be, or would they not be opposed because maybe they would get some cash to kind of let it happen? What's the feeling amongst the other 2 NFL franchises in Texas?
That's a good question because you would think that, okay, so the ownership used to be Jerry Jones and Bob McNair. Bob McNair passed away 3 weeks ago, so maybe that changes the kind of dynamic. But, I would think, like, from a Texans standpoint, I think this would be one of those where, like, they probably wouldn't favor an NFL team from San Antonio. That's the sense I get being in Houston the last 8 years, that, the Texans are extremely popular in the city of Houston and their surrounding areas. But if you were to, like, look at a map of Texas as a whole, there's going to be a lot of Cowboys blue as opposed to like Texans, red, right? And so they want to get more fans. Like, I'm sure that's one of the organization's goals, is to build out their fan base over the years and decades, and this would kind of hurt that. I'm sure, though, on the other side, that the Cowboys and Jerry Jones would more actively dislike an NFL team in San Antonio. Because, as I mentioned, like, that is a Cowboys town without question. And so from Jerry's standpoint, if you put a team in San Antonio, all of a sudden that would, go away or at least be drastically reduced because, the people in San Antonio would likely go for the home team. So my sense would be like that the Texans would prefer it not to be the case, but that Jerry Jones in Dallas would really not want an NFL team in San Antonio. I could be wrong, but that's my feeling based on just the incentives that are aligned with these organizations.
Michael, turf aside, how viable an option is the Alamo Dome? I've never been out there. I know size-wise it's great for football, but is it up to today's standards? It's a little bit of an older stadium. I know the Spurs used to play there forever ago. What is that stadium like?
I think it's good enough to host an NFL team for definitely 8 games next season. I know that they. I was just, doing research in preparation for this interview over the course of the week. I was just, kind of going through some of the things that they are doing. And, I mean, according to their mayor, they do renovations to it every single year. And Mark Davis mentioned the turf. And one of the things that he said is that they're replacing the turf entirely at the Alamo Dome, I believe, this year. So that would apparently not be an issue. And I think if you look at it in comparison to some of the places that have been discussed nationally with the Raiders playing, like some of these places in Las Vegas or anywhere else, or even like San Diego, I think that the Alamo Dome would be probably one of the best solutions. Like, it wouldn't be as good as Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, obviously, because of just age, but among the actual viable contenders, the Alamo Dome, it's in the Final Four rotation, obviously, for college basketball. It's used a pretty decent amount by various events. I think it seems like it would be a pretty good option. Like, there's never really going to be a great option for a one-year temporary situation. But as far as the options go, the Alamo Dome seems like it would be a pretty solid one for next season and very viable with few major logistical challenges.
All right, Mike Meltzer from 610 Sports Radio in Houston. Mike, thanks, and we'll keep in touch with you. We'll have you on again and get an update, especially as we get closer to a decision.
Sounds Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
All right. Mike Meltzer, Sports Radio 610 in Houston. If you want to monitor that situation, you can listen to them on the radio.com app. So, Matt, it seems like outside of the field turf, it seems like it's really a good, viable option for the Raiders. Whether or not it happens is a different story.
I always go back to, is it going to be Vegas? Is it going to be San Antonio? I mean, it was there. It was an option early on as far as relocation goes. I mean, it's 1 year, man. If they're there, they're there. It's one season. They're coming here in 2020, so I don't think it would be a problem.
You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio. When we come back, Raffi Melkonian, tell us about the lawsuit.
The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas. And listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM in Las Vegas. The city's only All Raiders All the Time talk show. And, of course, we are going to continue to talk about the lawsuit that the City of Oakland filed against the Raiders this past Tuesday. And joining us on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line is Raffi Melkonian. Raffi is just an amazing attorney, trial appellate matters nationwide down at including the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. He's a commercial litigator. He's done antitrust, done all kinds of things that I don't understand, frankly, Raffi. So you'll have to straighten me. He's also the social media chair of the State Bar of the Texas Appellate Practice Section. So really cool. And this guy went to Harvard. He got his JD at Harvard Law School, cum laude there, and was the executive editor of the Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy. Now, Raffi, thanks for joining us here today on a Sunday.
Yeah, good morning. I'm really happy to be on.
All right. Well, you caught my eye along with a lot of other folks because when this lawsuit was filed, you had some, I think, really, really good takes on it, especially if you're somebody who believes that the lawsuit might be frivolous, even though I'm not a lawyer and I have no idea legal merit. It just seemed counterintuitive to what they were doing. But let's start with you just breaking down a little bit of what exactly the Raiders the City of Oakland is claiming that the Raiders have done that violates the law.
Sure, and you stop me, with any questions you might have. But basically, as I'm sure you know, the City of Oakland has sued the Raiders and all the other NFL teams and the National Football League itself for moving the Raiders from Oakland to Las Vegas. And they basically have two claims. One centers around the relocation fee. Now, you may all remember that when the Raiders agreed to move to Las Vegas, the Raiders paid all the other NFL owners about $350 million, and they split that down the middle, goes straight into their pockets. It doesn't count in the salary cap, so it's like pure bonus for the owners. So Oakland is saying that payment basically rigs the market in favor of moving. In other words, if you stay in Oakland, the owners don't get that money. If you move anywhere, but Las Vegas in this case, the owners get a huge windfall. And so Oakland's saying you're rigging the market, you're violating what's called the antitrust laws by offering that relocation payment. So that's point number one. And the other point is basically you were lying to us. You told us all along you were going to stay in Oakland, just come up with a plausible offer. And Oakland says we did. We have this Ronnie Lott offer. And you guys were never serious with us, they say. You were really just using us to get a better deal out of Las Vegas or the other contenders. And so it's really a breach of contract idea. Like, we had a deal. You guys breached that agreement, and there's other details that I'm not going to get into. And therefore, you should pay us for what we're about to lose.
Raffi,
so those are the two theories.
Raffi, Matt Gutierrez here. Let me ask you this. If it does turn out to be just kind of a frivolous style thing, what can the City of Oakland actually get out of this entire thing versus what they actually want from this whole lawsuit?
Yeah, sure. First of all, let's start with the most basic thing, which is they are not asking the Raiders to move back to Oakland. That's not part of the lawsuit. They just want money. So that's the first big idea. So the other thing that's going to happen, happens in every federal case, is the defendants are going to file a bunch of motions coming up here as soon as they get into the case, in the next few months, let's say. Those are called motions to dismiss. Basically, they ask the federal judge to throw out the case, not exactly as frivolous, but as without legal merit, right? So if the judge does that, the case is over. You can go up to the courts of appeals, which are the higher courts, and they can decide whether that was right or wrong. But if the judge doesn't do that, if the judge says, look, there's enough here to go forward, what happens then is called discovery, and that's when the City of Oakland is going to get to ask for all the emails internally with the NFL teams, internally within the NFL structure itself, so emails to Roger Goodell, documents, Excel spreadsheets, all that kind of stuff. And so if it gets there, I think that's the strategy Oakland really is following here. They wanted to get through those first motions, get to discovery. Discovery's probably going to be embarrassing for the NFL because people write stuff in emails they shouldn't, and they're hoping they'll settle then and get some money. I don't think their strategy is to take this all the way to trial. That doesn't sound very likely to me.
Again, we're talking to Raffi Melkonian, a partner at Wright, Close & Barger down in Houston, about the Oakland lawsuit against the Raiders. Now, Raffi, a couple of things that I noticed that you had talked about. Number one, you mentioned earlier about this breach of contract, and you think that actually the claim that the city of Oakland is making around that breach of contract is perhaps one of the things that sticks out most about being sort of without too much merit based on the argument. Tell us a little bit about that and why.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of legs on that claim. Basically, their explanation for the breach of contract, it's two things. One is what I said about you told us you're going to try to stay, but you really weren't. And number two is Oakland says you were breaching the NFL's own relocation policy, which tells you how the NFL is supposed to decide whether a team moves or stays. And Oakland says, well, you didn't follow those rules. But I just don't see any court telling the NFL that it didn't follow its own rules about relocating. And anyway, I don't even think that's a contract with the city of Oakland. I mean, maybe some of the other teams could complain about that.
Sure.
Like, maybe the Giants are mad about that and they want to sue the NFL. But I don't know that some outside party, even if it's the city that used to host an NFL team, can say they had a contract because the NFL has its own rules about how to move. So that doesn't sound super plausible to me.
Well, another super interesting piece that you highlighted in this extensively long lawsuit, 300 plus pages,
it's a long thing,
was that the city of Oakland is essentially claiming that the NFL violated a Ninth Circuit ruling about a case that involved the Raiders and the Sherman Act.
Yeah.
And
so that's go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, tell us about that. And to me, it is almost, there's so many digs in this lawsuit too. Like, and I don't know how common that is in the legal industry where they take some shots at Las Vegas, calling us transient, all this kind of stuff. But this one also seems like, well, yeah, they have to use case law. I get that. But to say, hey, we're going to use the Raiders' win against them.
Yeah. So let me start with the digs because I thought those are pretty funny. There's a bunch of sort of insults in this lawsuit, both against Las Vegas and they even include insults, Las Vegas supposedly made about Ronnie Lott or the Raiders did in that case. That's pretty uncommon. You're supposed to not do that because it doesn't really help. The judge doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's just for public consumption if you're going to do that sort of thing. And I think it's a bad idea. So they're funny, but not going to help. In terms of this reliance on this old case where the Raiders, were in litigation about exactly the same thing, but with their fellow teams, that's not really going to make a huge difference. The idea is that the courts back then told you how you were supposed to behave. The NFL put in these relocation policies to respond to the courts, which is true. That part is true. And now you're violating the very relocation policies you put in place to respond to that lawsuit. And that's wrong. That's basically the idea that, hey, you guys responded to the court by making these rules that made it more likely for teams to stay where they were, and now you're not doing that. But this is a very different case. I mean, the antitrust allegations in this case are all about this relocation fee. That's never been tested before in any court that I know of. And so I that old case is of pretty limited use here. I think they just they wanted it rhetorically to say, look, you're violating the rules you agreed to a long time ago.
My biggest question about the relocation fee is obviously this is something that is agreed upon league-wide. How it sounds to me like the city of Oakland is basically they make it sound like the Raiders went in and said, hey, listen, if you do let us go, we'll sweeten the pot by throwing all this money in there. Why does the city make it sound like this is something that's never been seen before?
Well, because it's good for their lawsuit. But, the thing is that, if you just step back from it and you don't know about the context of the NFL, it sounds like a pretty good argument, right? If we move, we get all these millions of dollars, and if we stay, we don't, and that's rigging the game against Oakland. So I think that's why they're concentrating on it. And also, there's not like some case, like some federal law case that says they're wrong about that. So they've picked probably the most reasonable argument they've got, which is you're violating the laws by offering this pot of gold if you move. I don't think it's worth it. NFL and the Raiders and all the other teams. It just hasn't invested.
All right, Raffi. Hey, Raffi. Hey, listen, we got to run. I want to thank you, and we want to have you on again as we get more down the line on this lawsuit and see where it goes. I want to thank you again for taking your time for joining us here on the Silver and Black today.
Absolutely. It was a blast. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks. Again, Raffi Melkonian, partner down in Texas law firm. He broke down the lawsuit for us. We will be back. We're going to step aside. Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
The law office of Michael.
a.m. on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
Go Irish, Tim Brown, Raider great. I wonder if he's an apologist for Mark Davis, too.
You
See these
always
guys
take it back to Notre Dame.
These guys talking about Cliff Branch because he says positive things about Las Vegas, that he's somehow just a yes man for Mark Davis. Like, come on.
It's ridiculous.
Is it not Raider Nation? I mean, geez, you're talking about a guy who should be in the Hall of Fame. And we had a lot of fun with him, by the way. And when we talked to him at the Toys for Tots. You're back with Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We are in our last segment here before the Raiders kick off in about 10 minutes in Cincinnati against the Bengals. Just a fascinating conversation. I want to thank again Raffi Melkonian, that attorney who just walked us through all of this and really did a great job. I like it, Matt, so much because it's objective. He's not an Oakland guy. He's not a Vegas guy. He's not a Raiders guy. He's an attorney.
No, and right off the bat, he says this lawsuit just doesn't make sense. So a completely unbiased opinion tells you kind of where this thing stands. We'll see if it goes down that route. But
yeah, and I think that I'm sure we'll get some tweets now about, does Mark Davis pay him?
Yeah, well.
But apparently Mark Davis has no money to pay anybody, remember?
The haters live on, man.
They do. Now, the stadium. So progress made with the stadium. And David, jump on here for a second. David Stepanian, our engineer and reporter here with Silver and Black Today. David, now there is a series. We're gonna roll a story here by you now. What is this about? And before we play it, tell people what's going on with the Raiders and how they're documenting the construction of the stadium.
Well, the series is called From the Ground Up. It's on the front page of Raiders.com, so it's pretty easy to find. It's on their YouTube page, and it's basically about it's documenting the whole process of constructing that stadium here in Vegas.
Cool.
And it also looks into the construction workers themselves, and you'll get, sort of cameo appearances from execs, and they're coming out checking out the stadium. But it's once a month. They upload it to their YouTube and Raiders.com.
Once a month. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
so there were 2 episodes in.
And it's kind of the story behind the story. Okay, so we're going to roll that. Here's a background on this series, in case you've missed it, at the stadium and the construction of the Raiders' new home in Las Vegas.
Take a drive down Hacienda or Russell Road in Las Vegas, and you'll find the construction of a nearly $2 billion stadium inching towards completion, like Marshawn Lynch inching for a first down. In 2020, the Raiders will call Las Vegas home, and Lawrence Porter is working with the Raiders to capture the whole thing on video for the Raiders' new series, From the Ground Up.
We were fortunate enough to secure Mike Rowe as the narrator. It was a good natural fit, and the folks at the Raiders worked really hard to bring him into this. We're trying to delve into the lives a little bit of those who want to invite us in. We have a really unique episode coming up. We went rock crawling with one of the site supers who likes to go rock crawling. These big projects are interesting in that it's almost like a circus or the military. These folks move all around the country and the world to build these stadiums or these big-scale projects. It takes a unique skill set, and these companies specialize in these kind of things. So it's kind of their bag, and so they'll pick their families up, move to a new town for a couple years, and make roots there, and then pick up and move again. So I think giving a chance to highlight their work and who they are is rewarding for me, I think for them too.
Lawrence spends his days going to the construction site and making sure no bit of good footage is going to waste. He's been heavily involved in the construction process since early on and knows firsthand how important this is to owner Mark Davis and how important it is to remain on schedule and on budget.
The bowl is completely excavated. They're still excavating the end where the field tray is going to roll in and out. And I believe when that field tray is in, that will become an events plaza down on the south end. It's a pretty large area. I mean, it's the size of a football field. So there's they call it the 0500 and the 100 level decks. 100 level that's where most of the activity is going to happen. Most of your concessions are going to be there. Most of your bars are going to be there. That decking is all done. That's where the Raiders store will be. That's where all of the big branding is going to be. So at different levels, you'll be able to see different aspects of the torch, and it's going to face in so that anyone seating looking out at Las Vegas is going to be able to see the torch.
The framework for the stadium is complete, with the pieces being put in place as we speak, and the north side of the stadium serving as the main entrance.
They want the entire experience from when you essentially leave your hotel or when you come to tailgate at one of the various options that they're going to have for that. it's a Raiders experience the entire way. I'm sure there's going to be entertainment. They're working with the different brands in town to create special experiences for people. The building itself, you can kind of see now this steel structure. You're gonna see pieces of that steel structure kind of passing through the flooring. It's all black. It's going to be a black glass exterior with some ribbons, some decorative ribbons that light up in woven into that glass. It looks to me too that almost every seat is going to be a great seat, similar to what they've done at T-Mobile. It's got quite a bit of rake to it, so when you're sitting up at the top, it's quite a bit of a rake to the seating, but it gives you a really good view of the field.
Fans can find a more detailed look at the stadium at the Raiders Preview Center in Town Square, Las Vegas, and can check the constant progress of the stadium by watching from the ground up on Raiders.com. For Silver and Black Today, I'm David Stepanian.
All right, David, thanks so much, man, for that. I appreciate it. Matt, stadium's going up quick. Now,
I can't wait, man. Just talking about it gets just driving by it every day, and you're starting to see the risers now on the inside where seating is going to go and all that. Man, it's going to be amazing.
It's crazy. There was so much Raiders news this week, Matt, that we couldn't get to all of it. Martavis Bryant suspended, not surprised.
It took longer than expected.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think he still could be back with the Raiders, depending how long that suspension is. If the league allows him to play again,
right,
is number one. And number two, we talked about Reggie McKenzie, his dismissal on our podcast this week. So go listen to the podcast number 65. You can hear an in-depth discussion. But what's your legacy for him, Matt, as far as Reggie McKenzie and his time in Oakland?
I think the biggest thing with McKenzie is he was the first GM to come in and not be Al Davis, the first guy to really run the team from a personnel and I guess financial standpoint. That wasn't Al Davis, and he took over a team that was kind of a mess financially in cap hell, and he really righted the ship, turned that thing around, got them out of those horrible contracts and the dead money. Some good drafts, some great draft picks, some draft busts. I mean, entire drafts that aren't even on the team anymore. So very, very uneven in the draft world, but I think he nailed some of the free agents and really just turned the franchise around from a financial perspective.
All right, Matt. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I can't believe this hour's gone by. We will talk to you. Hopefully, we'll get you on the podcast again this week. We'll do one if we can get it in, depending on work schedules. But Reggie McKenzie. I think if you look at drafts, I think if you look at one of our followers, Stacanova on Twitter, I'm going to forward this. He's a brilliant guy, an analyst, and he showed Reggie McKenzie's drafts as good as anyone else's in the division for the most part, with the exception of one team. So a mixed bag to be certain, but Reggie McKenzie, thanks for all you did. A great NFL executive. I'm sure he'll have some future career in the NFL.
He'll be back.
He'll be back. You've been listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio. We appreciate everybody joining us on audio or on video. We'll be back next week. Get ready for kickoff coming up here at top of the hour on CBS. You can watch the Raiders take on the Bengals. Until next week, may the autumn wind always be at your back. For Matt Gutierrez, I am Skuckle Branson. For our engineer, David Stepanian. We'll talk to you next week, Raider Nation.
If you need to sell your house, talk to Aaron Taylor. The most experience around. Talk